Are we headed towards another recession? Will 2014 be the year that Wall Street finally realizes the fallacy of an economic recovery? Before we get into this, let me just say that many economists believe we are still in recession. For example, economist John Williams has compiled data that shows the US has been in recession since 2005. So if you want to make the argument that the US economy is currently in a recession, I have no problem with that. In fact, I wholeheartedly agree with you, as would millions of other Americans, who are currently suffering greatly from this weak economic environment. Rather or not you currently believe we are in a recession, there are numerous indications that we are headed right back into another major economic slowdown. So without wasting any more of your time, here are 12 warning signs that the US is headed for another recession. Reason 1. Recently, data came out that showed the number of new mortgage applicants in the US has fallen to the lowest level we've seen in 20 years. Reason 2. The major retail chain, Radio Shack, has recently announced plans to close over 1,000 stores. This is just another sign that a retail apocalypse is upon us. Reason 3. Obamacare is damaging the healthcare industry like we've never seen it before. And I quote, "The Affordable Care Act is creating significant financial uncertainty to healthcare organizations," said a survey respondent from the healthcare and social assistance industry. With little warning, the negative impact on revenue has been unprecedented. End quote. Reason 4. The ISM Services Index is lower than it has been in 4 years, and ISM employment just experienced the largest decline since Lehman Brothers collapsed. Reason 5. Trading revenue just dropped significantly for the too big to fail on Wall Street, at a time of the year when trading revenue is supposed to be highest. Reason 6. JP Morgan, one of the largest banks in the nation, is planning on firing thousands of workers. Reason 7. Chicago's credit rating recently dropped to just 3 notches above junk status. Reason 8. According to the unadjusted numbers, the US economy lost 2.87 million jobs in January. The last time the US has lost that many jobs was in 2009 during the peak of the recession. Reason 9. Disposable income in the US has experienced the largest year-over-year decline since 1974. Reason 10. Just 35% of Americans say they are better off financially than they were this time last year. Reason 11. Sales for Caterpillar, a worldwide machinery company, have fallen 14 months straight. Reason 12. According to recent economic data, almost all of the largest economies are currently slowing down. The following comes from a recent Zero Hedge article. And I quote, "The last 3 weeks have seen the macro fundamentals of the G10 major economies collapse at the fastest pace in almost 4 years, and almost the biggest slump since Lehman. Despite a plethora of data showing that weather is not to blame, US strategists, economists, and asset gatherers are sticking to the meme that this is all because of the cold on the east coast of the US, and that means wondrous pent-up demand to come. However, as the New York Times reports, for the Earth, it was the 4th warmest January on record." End quote. With all the bad economic news, things in Ukraine are heating up, and Russia keeps on thinking about how it will respond if the US decides to place sanctions on them. One Russian news source suggests that the Russian parliament might confiscate assets and property of American businesses in Russia if the US decides to place sanctions. This includes mining companies, retailers and banks. If the US places sanctions on Russia, and if Russia follows through with what they say they'll do, it would be a complete disaster, as some American companies have billions invested in Russia, which could be gone overnight. So let's pray for peace in the Ukraine, and that economic war between Russia and the US is avoided. An economic war is the last thing America needs right now. But despite Ukraine, the US economy has some tough times ahead. Unfortunately, many Americans never learned from the financial crisis of 2008, and when the next crash comes, they will be completely wiped out. The sad reality is that a majority of Americans simply make the assumption that the government and central banks know what they are doing, and that they have everything under control. Of course, nothing is further from the truth, and millions of Americans are going to be completely blindsided by what happens next.